Welcome, Bronco Nation, my game preview for Boise State versus Utah State. Yes, some of you may have forgotten in the midst of all of the craziness that's happened in the last couple of days, the firing of Andy Avalos, the rumors of Eric McAllister may be coming back, the new head coaching search, and all the candidates that are popping up in regards to that. Some of you may have forgotten that we actually do have a game this week. Boise State's season is not over. This was a mid-season firing, or tail end of the season firing. So we still have two more games left. Boise State is still playing Utah State this week, and the week after that they have Air Force. So we have two more games for this team to try and pick itself up after this very, very shocking news of the firing of Andy Avalos, with interim head coach Spencer Danielson taking over the reins to pick themselves up and play through the rest of the year. And as we're going to talk about in this video, there is still a lot for Boise State to play for. So this week becomes incredibly important to try and refocus this team, get themselves back on track, and build some positive energy into what is going to be a very confusing and potentially chaotic end of the season here and postseason as a new head coach comes in and Boise State tries to reorient itself for 2024. How they're able to do that, a lot of that is going to come down to how they finish this season. If they can do it the right way, end with positive energy and momentum that they can then take into next year. So Boise State 5-5 facing the also 5-5 Utah State, a true battle for bowl eligibility in this game. Both programs trying to get to that magical 6-win number this matchup. It's on Saturday, November 18th, 5 p.m. Mountain Central Time on CBS Sports Network. And Boise State, despite playing at Utah State in this game, despite losing their head coach, and despite a season that so far has been up and down to say the less, with a lot trending downwards record-wise overall, Boise State is actually favored in this matchup and given a pretty significant chance of winning, 63.6% chance of winning, and given a 3.5 points per Vegas. So, what does this game mean for the program? Well, like we said, it means bowl eligibility if they can win this game. But it also shows that this team is strong, that the loss of Andy Avalos does not weaken this program. If anything, it helps push them back on the right path to becoming the champions that we know they have been in the past, restoring this elite institution back to its proper place. And it shows that this team is able to rally around itself and move forward, and helps create a strong base for the next coaching staff, whoever that is. It also, coincidentally, like I said, Spencer Danielson's first time coaching as a head coach, a young, inexperienced coach in the college football game. This is only his first time being a coordinator at the FBS level, now elevated suddenly to head coach in the interim role. This is his chance to kind of put together a bit of a job application for the role of Boise State head coach. Some very powerful names are putting his name out there as a potential candidate to replace Andy Avalos. And while there is a long list of potential candidates to replace Andy Avalos, which I put out my own video 3 weeks ago before any of this even happened, kind of seeing that this was the trend that Boise State was headed in, and put out my own list of candidates that I think Boise State will look at. He's one of those guys that is ending up in a lot of people's lists of potential candidates for the head role at Boise State. And so this end of the season is his chance to put together a proposition package saying, you know what, I have good chemistry with the team. It's highly reported, and not just by, there was highly reported that Andy Avalos had good ties with the team as well, and it is also coming out that these may not have been as strong as were previously reported. But this is not just coming out from reporting outlets, also from family members and players on the team are vocalizing how much they love and support Spencer Danielson. So he has good chemistry with the team. He has a good connection with the team. He's shown a lot of promise as the defensive coordinator. He could potentially put his name forward as a candidate to replace Andy Avalos as the head coach. But that decision-making process is going to happen pretty quickly here. We are expecting in the next few weeks for there to be movement on this head coaching search, potentially by hopefully by signing day, but even potentially by the time we get to the Mountain West Championship, a head coach being announced for Boise State. And so Spencer Danielson wants to put his name into that hat, and to keep it there, he needs to make a big impression with a win versus Utah State. That would be a long way to putting himself into the running for this. So this is a game with a lot of complex moving pieces as far as the implications go, and I haven't even talked about it for Utah State. Obviously a chance for them to end their season on a high note, another somewhat disappointing year for them, but a chance to get to bowl eligibility as they continue to fight for their own season goals. So both teams, it's really a 50-50 game when it comes down to it. It was going to be a 50-50 game regardless, because Utah State has been a good program in flashes this season. I mean, the way that they played Fresno State, the way that they played JMU as an undefeated team in the Sun Belt, both losses, but close losses, and they had flashes of being that 2021 team that won the Mountain West a couple seasons ago. But then they've also looked quite consistently like the 2022 team that finished 6-7, and so you just don't know which product of Utah State you're going to get on the field. And so this was going to be a 50-50, could go either way game for Boise State. And now you have all the confusion of the new head coach, the new interim coach, and all the chaos that has erupted from that in the week of the game. This has definitely become a much closer matchup. 63.6% is a little too much. I think it should be much closer to 50-50, and that it could go either way. And so this game is going to be a very, very interesting one to watch to see what direction Boise State is going to potentially move post Andy Avalos. Now, for series history between these two teams, it has been one of the longer sustained matchups that Boise State has had with programs in the Mountain West. Their first game was in 1975. So again, starting this matchup a lot earlier than a lot of other teams that Boise State's played in the Mountain West. 1975, Utah State took the first win, a 19-42 win for Utah State. But from 98 onward, there were a couple of the wins between 1975 and 1998 between Boise State and Utah State, splitting the series mostly evenly. But between 1998 and 2022, Boise State built a commanding lead in the series and now owns the series so far 22-5. It's only 5 wins by Utah State in the entire 27 times that these games have been played. Only 1 win by Utah State in that stretch between 98 and 22. A big win by them in 2015. A down year for the Boise State program for sure, when they ended up losing that game 26-52. But Boise State every other time has won, including in 2021 when Utah State won the Mountain West. It was a big win at Utah State for Boise State, kind of a big win for that program to show that there was still a hope and a light for Boise State. And in 2022, Boise State got a big win, 42-23 on the Blue. So now they're going back to Utah State, having to go play at Logan. And this is not going to be, like I said, an easy game because Utah State considers themselves one of the top teams in the Mountain West. That's what their goals are, and they have somewhat played like that in the last 15 years. They've put themselves in that conversation as one of the top teams in their conference. But right now, they are sensing some blood in the water. I mean, a lot of teams that have faced Boise State this year have sensed that with the way the record has gone. But when you have a Boise State team that's just lost their head coach and you're going to have to go play at their place on senior night, that is a very tough situation to go into. So they're looking to try and get their second win in the series since 1998. Now, some key players from Boise State are going to have something to say about that. And all 3 key players that I've selected for this matchup are all leaders on this team, are all seniors in this program, and are going to be a big part of helping to pick up that leadership role now that the head coach is gone. So number 1 for me is going to be George Halani. He's an automatic key player anyways because he is the heart and soul right now of this rushing attack for Boise State. You just lost Maddox Matson, who was really an exciting spark for this offense and was the one that ran the offense the most efficiently. Now Taylor Green is now going to be stepping back into the role as the starter after having lost it for 1 game, and really having lost it before that point, just not officially, because he's still being given he's still being allowed to step out and start, even though they were pulling him quickly for Maddox Matson. So now Taylor Green's coming back in. He's going to have to recover himself as a starter for this program, run an offense that he has struggled to run consistently. So Boise State's going to really want to focus on George Halani here. He's going to be a key player for them, not just a leader in the locker room as a senior, but also as a leader on this field, being someone they can rely on to tote this rock, especially with the fact that Ashton Jeanty is still not 100%. Now, he is going to be practicing this week, so perhaps he could be getting back out there, but he is only just starting to practice, so we could see another couple of weeks of him trying to recover fully before we see him back out there. So it's all going to flow through George Halani. He has come back into the season after being injured early in the year, and he's put up 300 yards on 65 carries, averaging 4.6 yards and 3 touchdowns. His last 2 games, he's had 100-plus yards all-purpose, combined rushing and receiving. He's also put up 128 yards receiving on the season so far. So he is definitely attacking the latter end of this season aggressively, trying to make up for the time that he was out. Second key player for me is going to be Jonah Dalmez, another senior on this program, another player who's going to be a big part of getting this program headed right in the right direction as they, again, struggle to find those leadership roles with the loss of the head coach. He's been great again this season. He took the record for the most field goals made in Boise State history. He is, without statistically, the greatest kicker in Boise State history, and I believe that his record career-wise shows also, just from a subjective point of view, that he's also the greatest kicker in Boise State history. He's 15 of 18 this year, the long of 56, only one true miss, two procedural misses, a blocked kick and a bad snap that forced a miss. So two misses that were not his fault. So really, he's 15 of 16 if you're just looking at what he was able to control kicking the ball, and he's been fantastic. And in a game against Utah State that, again, is a 50-50 type matchup. I mean, Boise State's only favored by 3.5, so they're only favored by about a field goal right now anyway. A field goal could end up being the difference maker for a win in Boise State's favor. Now, DJ Schramm is going to be my third key player. He was injured again early in the season. Boise State has just dealt with so many injuries this season, and it's really waylaid them and their potential. But DJ Schramm, one of those guys that went down early in the year, got hurt versus UCF, tried to stay in it versus San Diego State, and getting taken out early. Only 23 tackles this season. He missed 5 games. And the last couple of games that he's come back, he just hasn't seemed his dominant self. He's had 5 or less tackles in each of the last 2 games. And this, again, was a player that was averaging well over 7 or so tackles every game. And he led the team in tackling last year with over 100 tackles. So this is a player that Boise State needs to get back into the game, especially with the loss of Marco Notarani, who had stepped up into DJ Schramm's shoes. He looks like he's going to be out for the foreseeable future, probably out for the season. So Boise State really needs DJ Schramm, a leader on this team, to step up for the defense. You got a leader in Halani, leader for the offense, George Halani, a leader for the special teams in Jonah Damas, and a leader for the defense here in DJ Schramm. Those 3 players together are going to be key to making sure that all 3 phases, Boise State's offense, defense, special teams, continue to function at an elite level, even with the loss of the head coach. For key players for Utah State, because again, they're going to have a say in the outcome of this matchup for sure, is going to be number 1 for me is going to be quarterback Cooper Legos. He's had a bit of an up and down season himself, but he seems to have finally resecured the starting role, beating out the freshman Miles Hillstead, who was having definitely a resurgent year, had a chance to potentially take over the starting role versus Cooper Legos. But Cooper Legos has reinserted himself as a starter for Utah State. 1,687 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's also put up 106 yards rushing on 61 carries, which if you factor in the negative 95-yard sacks that takes away from his rushing total, he's really put up over 200 yards or so rushing to make up for that negative lost yardage. So while he's not necessarily what you would call a dual threat quarterback, he definitely is a quarterback who can get out there and make some moves in the open field if he needs to scramble, if they want to call a designed run. And Boise State has struggled to stop those guys, and that might be something that they try to exploit in this one. For the receiving game, I'm going to look at 2 guys, because between these 2 players, Royals and Vaughn, they have put up almost 1,600 yards of receiving, 821 yards for Royals and 776 yards for Vaughn. And between the 2 of them, they have 21 touchdowns for Utah State. Now, they're not the only playmakers on this offense. Utah State also has a couple of very competent backs. They have some more receivers that are going to be a threat factor for them. But Boise State has struggled in the secondary to stop the passing game all season long, especially the deep ball. And this is going to be something that Utah State could exploit in front of their home crowd. It's going to be very, very hard for Boise State to stop both of these guys, because once you double team one, the other one is going to be able to get open. And Royal is definitely a deep threat for Utah State. So Boise State is going to really struggle, I think, to shut these 2 guys down. And if they have a big game, it could change the outcome of this matchup. And the last playmaker for me for Utah State is going to be linebacker MJ Tafisi, I think is how you say his name, Tafisi Jr. 108 tackles, 1 pass defended, 2 forced fumbles. Really the DJ Schramm equivalent of what last year's DJ Schramm was anyways. He hasn't made a huge impact in the backfield or anything like that, but he has been that utility, all-around utility player who's been cleaning up for the defense, and he's going to need to have a big game if he wants to stop the dual-headed attack of George Halani and Dubar, or Dudley out there, whoever Boise State decides to send out, because they have a couple backs behind Halani that can definitely get the job done. So, keys the game for Boise State in winning this matchup. Well, my keys the game have definitely changed since the news broke about Andy Avalos. The Andy Avalos firing has changed everything for this matchup, and while Boise State can still win it, they're going to have a little bit of a different focus coming into this one. And the first key that I have is the season isn't over. It might kind of feel like the season is over because you're 5-5, you're not ranked, you don't have any chance of getting to New Year's Six game, and your head coach just got fired, and those decisions usually happen at the end of the season. Now, now. I just did a video talking about why this change happened now and why it was needed now, and I encourage everybody to go back and watch that video. But the long and short of it is that you kind of expect these things to happen at the end of the year, and they didn't. So while it might feel right now like 2023 is over and 2024 is now just what we need to look forward to, there's still a lot to compete for this year. There's 2 more games to play, and the impact of those games could be major. First off, a bowl game is still on the table. Boise State can still get to a bowl game. That's completely achievable within their own realm of control. But beyond that, a Mountain West championship is still technically possible. Now, Boise State does not control their own destiny. They need several teams in front of them to lose. However, chaos has been hitting the Mountain West at the end of the season. Fresno State losing to San Jose State, Air Force losing to Hawaii. The Mountain West has taken themselves out of the race for the New Year's Six at this point. But beyond that, we don't even know who's going to be playing in that Mountain West Championship game. And there are 2 important weeks of football left after this one that is going to determine that. So Boise State handles their side of business, wins these next 2 games, and a couple of other things happen. Boise State could be in the Mountain West Championship game, but they have to stay focused, and it is going to be incredibly difficult to come together as a team and focus right now. I mean, it's kind of like a display case going down in the shopping center and then just telling everybody, just ignore it and keep shopping. I mean, there are cans rolling everywhere right now, knocking people over, and it is really hard to focus on the task. For Boise State, all the noise is surrounding this program right now. There is just so much chaos going on. There's new leadership. The players are having to step in and be that leadership team as the interim coach takes over. There's not going to be as much of a focus on the defense as he has to make sure the whole team is going to be focused and handled together. I mean, this is a really tough spot for this team to be placed in, but they can still win out. They can. This roster has not been the problem this season. It's been the coaching. And now that Andy Avalos is gone, this roster can step up and prove that they are still an elite unit that has strong potential for 2024. Beyond what's able to be played for this season, they're playing for everything for 2024 right now, proving that this roster deserves to be put in a place of high regard with a strong coach going into next season and not having to build themselves back from this massive deficit that they put themselves in right now, this massive hole that the program has sunk into. Hopefully, if they can finish the season strong and prove the issue was the head coach and not the team, that might cause some of the voters around the country to look at this team differently coming into next season. And it's all about where you start if you want to have a chance of finishing high in those rankings, unfortunately, because of the human biased system that the polls are based on now. So for Boise State, there is so much to play for right now. The season isn't over. They need to prove that this team is still strong and set up for the future while also getting business handled right now and realizing that there's still a lot left to play for this season. Bronco Nation needs to realize that as well and come together behind these guys and support them. These players have played their hearts out for what has become a very disappointing season, but it doesn't have to end in a disappointing way. If Bronco Nation can continue to rally the way that you have, showing up for games, continuing to voice your support for this program, this team can recover and build towards a brighter future. But it's all going to start with us, Bronco Nation, coming behind and lifting this team up. So remember that the season isn't over. That's key number 1. Key number 2, and this one's really for Spencer Danielson, but it's for the team overall, is lean on your leaders. Spencer Danielson's in a tough spot right now. He's been elevated to take over as head coach, something he has no experience in, and especially not at the FBS level, let alone the FCS. He's been elevated to a role that he just is not prepared for right now, quite honestly. And the way that Boise State is going to win and to move forward from this is to lean on the leaders in the locker room. Boise State has an incredible crop of incredibly mature, seasoned, passionate leaders on this team. I have been so impressed all season long, but especially now in the wake of the news, by the response from the players on social media and the way that they have handled this situation. And what I'm hearing coming out of those locker rooms is that Boise State is coming together as a team, that this is making them stronger and more unified as a program versus having the potential to rip them apart. These leaders in the locker room are going to be so important. Even the guys on the team that are injured are going to be so important to bringing this team together and getting them focused and putting them back on track to building towards a brighter future. And so right now, whether that's leaning on the leaders in the locker room, I mean, Spencer Danielson's already done that in approaching the team leadership student council and having his discussions with them, and they're all on board with him. But regardless of whether that's leaning on the leaders in the locker room or on the field and letting your seniors step up and lead this program to success, whether that's in the locker room or on the field, that's what's Spencer Danielson's number one focus has got to be, is empowering the leaders on this team to lead and be the leaders that we know that they're capable of being. So number one, season isn't over. Number two, make sure you're leaning on your leaders. And number three is let Bush cook. The biggest issue this season has not been Bush Hamdan. It's not been the offense overall. It's not been the playmakers on the offense. It's been Andy Avalos interfering with and meddling with the offense. Well, Andy Avalos isn't here anymore. Bush Hamdan is running this offense. And Spencer Danielson, as a new head coach stepping up, he just needs to let Bush Hamdan do his thing. He's got this. He's a good offensive coordinator. He's done a great job of navigating this season despite all of the crazy demands and the two-headed quarterback system and all of that craziness. He's still done a good job of putting together a good game plan each week to give Boise State a chance, despite everything that was going on, to go out there and win their games. And so for right now, I am so excited about this offense because we are now hopefully going to get to see purely what it looks like when Bush Hamdan is in charge of it. Spencer Danielson, he's got, obviously he's the head coach as interim head coach. He's got to do a lot of things to make sure the team stays together on track. But when it comes to the offensive vision, he should not touch it. He doesn't know what he's doing there. He's very, very young. And Bush Hamdan is an experienced offensive coordinator who knows what he's doing with the offense. And so hopefully Spencer Danielson will let Bush Hamdan run the offense completely hands off, and we'll see what Bush is capable of doing. I mean, both of these guys, obviously, with a new head coach coming in, if it isn't Spencer Danielson, if the new head coach coming in, which it probably will be a different person from outside the program coming to take over, I mean, you don't know what that roster is going to look like as far as the coaching staff goes. You're not going to know what that staff is going to look like for this program. And right now, this offense has had struggles this year. Now, I think, again, most of that was Andy Avalos interfering with it, but it has been an offense that hasn't produced consistently throughout the year. So for Bush Hamdan, this is a chance for him to be able to show that he deserves to stay on this roster, on this staff, regardless of who takes over as head coach. Who's definitely probably going to come in with an idea of who he would want to be there. And this is his chance to put together his resume and say, this is my offense. I deserve to maintain control of it. And now we get to have a chance to see what Bush Hamdan's offense looks like when Bush Hamdan is running it by himself. And I'm incredibly excited for the potential of that offense. It's going to be different looking than we've seen all season because now you don't have Maddox Madsen around. Ashton Genty's probably still not going to be back, so it's going to be George Helani, Taylon Green, and then a mixture of other wide receivers because Eric McAllister isn't back yet either. So again, potentially he might return at some point, maybe for next season if things happen, but right now he's not on the roster either. So regardless, it's going to be a different looking offense than we've seen all season, with Taylon Green finally being reinstated as the number one only quarterback for this team. But we now also get to see what it looks like when Bush Hamdan has full control. And I've got to tell you, I am incredibly excited by the potential of that offense. I think we see a much smoother, much more focused offense, which has a much better idea of what it is coming into this game versus Utah State. So season isn't over. Lean on the leaders and let Bush cook. So summarizing this game for Boise State, this, again, is not going to be an easy game. Utah State is a well-balanced offensive team. Defense is another story, but offensively, this is a well-balanced team. They're averaging 35.5 points per game. They have 271 yards passing and 177 rushing yards, both of those per game, so well-balanced on both of those sides. They have two wide receivers, like I said, that are putting up over almost 1,600 between them, and they have another 500-plus yard receivers. So there are a wealth of targets for the offense to get the ball off to, and they have two 500-yard rushers. So they have a very strong two-headed rushing attack coming at you as well. Now, defensively, it's a different story. They're giving up 32.4 points per game. They're 109th in the country. Boise State's not doing much better right now. They're giving up 28.4 points per game. They're 78th in the country. But regardless, Utah State's weakness this year has been their defense, where they've given up over 30 points per game. And that's caused them to lose a lot of these close matchups. So it's something Boise State can definitely exploit. But offensively, coming against a defense that has a lot of question marks on it, this is a hard offense to stop. And it's at home for Utah State on senior night. Now, while this win isn't quite as important for Utah State, they have New Mexico after Boise, so they can pick up their bowl eligibility win then. They are going to be extremely motivated to beat the Broncos, and only one win since 1998. You don't know when this opportunity to face a team in this kind of chaotic situation, maybe a down program that has some weaknesses and vulnerabilities, you don't know when you're going to face that again. So you are going to bet that they are going to be extremely focused on going out and getting the win versus Boise State in this matchup. Something that they pride themselves on is wanting to be able to get those wins versus Boise State. That's, we are a lot of teams Super Bowl most years, maybe not this year being 5-5, but coming up against Utah State with only one win versus us in 1998, you got to bet we're going to be their Super Bowl this year, when the best bowl game they're probably looking forward to is against some MAC or Conference USA game. This is the best game they have the rest of the season. So they are going to be extremely focused, pulling out all the stops, playing from a corner, and that is when a team is the most dangerous. It is going to be incredibly difficult to stop this Utah State team. On the other hand, Boise State's in chaos right now. They've just lost their head coach. This is not a good position to be in, coming up against two tough teams at the end of the year. It's a young, inexperienced interim head coach who's, again, coaching for the first time as a coordinator at the FBS level. And now he's not going to be able to be completely focused on his defensive coordinator role, which this has been a defense that has had to be managed extremely carefully because you haven't had most of that senior leadership that you lost. You lost so many starters last year. It's been an incredibly young defense, and so it's been one that has needed a lot of hands-on attention to have a chance in these games, and he's not going to be able to necessarily give them that focus and that attention. Even if he's letting Bush run the offense, there are so many more pressures and stressors that come with being a head coach for a program, especially one that fires their head coach towards the end of the season when there's already so much stress coming into the end of the year. So the defensive focus is going to be split as well on a defense that is already struggling coming up against an offense that is strong and hard to stop. I haven't seen the injury report for this game, and it probably won't be released until just before. But if you're going off of last week's numbers, with the assumption at least that nobody is back, and hopefully that's not the case, but if you're going off of last week's numbers, they're up to at least 10 key players ranging from quarterback to defensive line that are going to be off of this team. I mean, you've got key wide receivers, key tight ends, key linebackers, all not playing because they're injured. So you've got a team that right now is vulnerable in their roster because they have so many players out injury-wise. And then you've got Green coming back as the lone quarterback for Boise State, but it's not a position he's been in for a while. He's been expected to be down in there for all three downs, handling all phases of the offense. And so it's going to be a little bit like a first game of the season for him, even though he's been playing and he's been in it. It's going to be a little bit like that, having to handle the load. And so even though he's an experienced quarterback for Boise State, who's had the starting role, who was the starter coming into the season, was the lone starter coming into the season, despite all of that, at this point, it's been so long since he played a full game. I mean, he hasn't played a full game where he was the only quarterback out there since before UCF. Even Washington, Max Madsen came in at the end. So, I mean, you're talking about, I don't think he's played an entire game this season where he's played all 4 quarters of the game, and now he's got to come back out there, handle an offense that he's already shown is not attuned to his strengths specifically, and he has now come out as the lone quarterback with no backup, with no safety net, and play the role for Boise State. That's going to be an interesting factor to look at, and one that doesn't put Boise State in a position of strength right now. So there are so many reasons that Boise State should lose this game, but massive reason that Boise State will win this game, and I am going to call a win for Boise State, is because Boise State needs this. The players need this. The program needs this. There's so much more to play for Boise State than there is for Utah State. It's not all about X's and O's. It's not all about roster strength. And I do believe roster strength-wise, Boise State has a better roster. It's just been mismanaged, but they have a better roster than Utah State. But it's not just all about the paper. It's not all about statistics. College football isn't just about who's lining up versus who, and it's not about who has more stats coming in versus who. That's not what college football is about. College football is the greatest sport on the planet because those don't matter so much. What matters is the mentality coming into the game. What matters is the reason why you're playing, why these young college kids are deciding to go out there on the field, and what is motivating them to go out and get the win. For Boise State, they have every reason to win right now. They have every reason to want to go out there and win. They're angry at the way that the coaching changed and the season has gone. They want to show that they're better than that. They want to show that they're still Boise State regardless of who the head coach is right now. They still have a Mountain West Championship game that they can play for. Utah State's not playing for that. They still have a bowl game that they can play for. Utah State is as well. But they have to win this game. Air Force is the next game on the schedule, and that is going to be a much tougher matchup. Utah State, if they drop this one, can still go out and almost definitely will beat New Mexico. So for Boise State, there are so many more reasons that they need to win, that they want to win this game than Utah State does. And I believe that the leadership on this program, and a big part that this offense will probably look better. You know, when you lose a head coach, a lot of times that head coach is an offensive-minded guy, and he was part of the offense. And so now you have a new interim head coach stepping up, And the offensive coordinator is now taking over the role for the first time truly by themselves, alone and unafraid. Well, Bush Hamdan, he's been the offense. Anything Andy Avalos has done has only pulled Boise State back. Well, that is gone. One of the main reasons that Boise State has been struggling this season is now gone from the team. The loss of the head coach is actually going to push this program forward. Now, I'm not saying that an interim head coach is better than having a head coach who's been through the whole season. I mean, that is more chaos added to the mix. But regardless, the reason that Boise State has lost many of these games is because of Andy Avalos' decision-making. So as long as the offense is completely in control of Bush Hamdan, Spencer Danielson is not touching it, Boise State has a much better chance of winning this game offensively. I am much more confident about Boise State winning this game with Bush Hamdan having 100% control of the offense than I was with Andy Avalos still at the realms. At the reins. So for Boise State, this loss of a coach, while it breeds a lot of chaos, will actually, I think, potentially make this team stronger. And I hate to say that because I have nothing personal against Andy Avalos, but the truth is he was holding this program back. And now Boise State has a chance to actually execute the offense the way they know that they can. And with Bush Hamdan having full control and with just one quarterback handling the reins, this is going to be a very different offensive look. And so Boise State has so much more to play for, and I think we're going to see a better offense than we've seen all season long for Boise State. This is going to be an offensive shootout. I think the defense is going to suffer from the lack of full attention that Spencer Danielson is going to would be able to pay attention to them otherwise. So I think the defense will struggle against an offense they would struggle against anyways because it's a strong offense from Utah State. I think this will be an offensive shootout with a lot of guts and a lot of emotion on the field, but Boise State finally is able to pull out a game winner, potentially a game-winning field goal versus Utah State. I'm calling a win by Boise State 41-38 as they try to build something positive out of this week of chaos and negativity and move forward in the right direction for 2024. So let me know. I didn't say at the beginning, but I do want to hear all of your score predictions in the comments. Please let me know. I want to hear that. I want to have that discussion with each of you. And if you want to have any other discussions about the state of this program and the direction of this program, I want to have that with you as well. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. Make sure you support this team no matter what. They need you now more than ever, Bronco Nation. Thank you for being there throughout the whole season for this program. Make sure you're with them to the end. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, go Big Blue!